Hello, I'm Rich Foley, and welcome to the Blue Rose Copper and Restoration Shop. I made this copper sculpture. I call it a geometric crystal, aka Genesis crystal. You can Google that and find out what that is. It's interesting reading. And I made this for a friend for garden art, and they liked it so much that they asked me to make another one that would complement this simple design. And I'm going to show you how I made that. This is the rectangular sculpture that I'm making to complement that Genesis crystal. As you can see, it's just two rectangles inside each other, and it hangs from a bracket. And I'm going to take you through step by step and show you how I made this. So I'm going to go into my shop and get started. Okay, the material that I'm going to use for this rectangles are 1.5 by 3/16 inch copper bus bar. It's a very heavy copper bar, and the 1.5 I'm going to use for the outside piece, and the inside piece I'm going to use a piece of 1/8 inch by 1.25 inch. Now, as you can see, this copper is a little tarnished, and I've had it in my shop for some time, and I want to clean that up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a belt sander and just quickly run over that. That belt sander does a nice job of taking off all the crud and all the dirt off that copper. And what it leaves me with is a nice brushed finish, which I'm going to use for my final finish. So all cleaned up. Here I have my 4 pieces of copper, all cleaned up, and I've got it all laid out so I can make my bends. And the way I'm going to make that bend is with my box and pan brake, also known as a finger brake. I have my box and pan brake adjusted so it can break this heavy 3/16 inch copper. And I also have it set for a 90 degree. So this is how I'm going to form every one of those rectangles. Now I'm going to form all 4 pieces just like this, so I can assemble them. I'm getting ready to assemble my rectangles together, and I have to fasten them together at 2 corners. And I'm going to use buck rivets to put this together. This is an old world skill way of attaching sheet metal together with buck rivets, they're called. And I made with I had some 16 penny copper spikes, and I cut them and made these rivets with them. So I'm going to put those together and hammer them together. Now bucking them together means hammering them over. So I'm going to do that on an anvil, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Here I have my corner all assembled and drilled with a 3/16 inch hole for the buck rivet. And I'm going to fit that buck rivet into the hole, like so. Then I'm going to take a rivet set and just hammer that into place. And I take my sheet metal hammer and I flatten that buck rivet. And I put 2 buck rivets in each corner. This tool that I'm using here just brings the 2 pieces of sheet metal tight together. And there's just a little bit of the rivet sticking up here. And I take my hammer and I carefully peen that rivet over. And you've got a nice tight joint. Now I have to do that with all the rest of the pieces. Okay, as you can see, I have my 2 rectangles, my inside and outside rectangle, all made up and all riveted together. Got them laying on the bench. And now I have to connect these rectangles together. And what I'm going to use is a 5/16 solid brass rod. And I'm going to cut it to length. And I'm going to thread the ends of the rod to receive the nuts. And then I'm going to bolt this whole thing together. So I'm going to show you how I put a thread on this rod. I used a 5/16 brass rod to make all my connections to hold these rectangles together. And what I did was I had to cut the bar to length and thread a 5/16 threaded on the back to receive all these 5/16 nuts. So I used a tap and die with the 5/16 die and a little bit of oil. You start your die carefully. Get your thread started. And I'm backing, you turn it about a quarter or a half a turn, then you back it off and break the pieces off so it doesn't damage the threads. That's why I'm backing it off like that. And there you have it, our threaded rod. After I cut my rod to length and threaded all the ends that I needed for 5/16 nuts, I assembled it together with these connector rods. I used acorn nuts on the ends. It's just a finished nut, and on the top part of it is I used a longer rod with a couple of slip nuts on it and a brass ball on the top to set into the bracket, and pretty much that's my finished rectangle. I finished up the rectangular sculpture, and it's hanging off a copper hook that I made and forged years ago. You can see the green patina on it, but there it shows the shapes of the two rectangular geometric pieces for the sculpture. I'm Rich Foley with Blue Rose Copper and Restoration Shop, and I hope to see you again in the next video.